All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I do see that a few more community members are joining us, but we'll go ahead and get started just to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. So good evening and welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances Control Exide public meeting. Our meeting this evening is scheduled to take place from 6 to 8 p.m. this evening. Please note that all of our meeting materials are available in English and Spanish and are accessible at our website. That website address is www.dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. Next slide, please. My name is Dion Falk, and I will be the facilitator for our public meeting. I'm a public participation manager with the Department of Toxic Substance Control on the Exide project. Please note that you should now be able to see our PowerPoint presentation on your screen. Next slide, please. I'd like to go over our meeting guidelines with you. We want you to be aware that by participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise, and the chat feature will be used for DTSC informational purposes. Please pay close attention to the chat feature because we will have DTSC information, contact emails, and phone numbers. We will allow you additional time after the public meeting to obtain the information posted in our chat. We ask that you limit your comments this evening to allow everyone the opportunity to participate during this public meeting. This public meeting will focus on the residential cleanup and the Exide facility closure. However, if you have other Exide questions, please feel free to call our hotline. Our hotline number is 844-225-3887. Again, that hotline number is 844-225-3887. Or you can send us an email. Our email address is exide@dtsc.ca.gov. Next slide, please. To support language and captions this evening, simultaneous Spanish audio interpretation is available for this meeting. Click the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select a language. It is important for everyone in this meeting to select a language, either English or Spanish. For Spanish-only audio, by phone, please call 877-779-6711. Again, I'm going to give you that number. For Spanish-only audio, you can call 877-779-6711 and enter the code 184-7879#. Presentation slides are available in Spanish at our website, dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. Automated closed captions have been turned on for this meeting. You can turn them off by simply clicking the CC icon at the bottom of your screen or moving the captions box. Please note that these captions are provided for convenience only and are not an official transcript of this meeting. Next slide, please. This public community meeting is being presented to you by the California Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Toxic Substances Control, also known as DTSC. Our mission is to protect California's people and the environment from harmful effects of toxic substances by restoring contaminated resources, enforcing hazardous waste laws, and reducing hazardous waste generation, and encouraging the manufacture of chemically safer products. Next slide, please. For our agenda this evening, we will receive welcome remarks from Meredith Williams, Director of DTSC, followed by comments by Todd Sachs, Deputy Director of the Site Mitigation and Restoration Program. Also for tonight's discussion, I would like to welcome Francesca Negri, our Chief Deputy Director, Lawrence Heffitz, Chief Counsel, and Mehdi Batahar, Assistant Deputy Director of Site Mitigation and Restoration, who will all comment this evening. Next slide, please. Now I would like to welcome our Department of Toxic Substance Control Director, Meredith Williams, to give opening remarks. Meredith?
Thank you, Dion, and thank you, all of you, for making time to join us this evening at the end of your day. I imagine some of those days are long days. I won't take too long in my comments. Our primary objective for this evening is to listen. Many of you have seen the LA Times articles and are no doubt concerned. You're frustrated, or worse yet, afraid for the health of your families. We understand. Exide was a terrible actor that shirked environmental protection laws, exposed workers and entire communities to toxic contamination, and even manipulated bankruptcy laws to get away from their obligations to clean up their pollution. Their actions have deeply and profoundly impacted you in this community. DTSC has been cleaning up the contamination left behind by Exide according to the provisions of the cleanup plan. That plan was developed in accordance with state and federal law and regulation and received significant public input. And we've been working hard on that cleanup. To date, we've removed more than 250,000 tons of impacted soil. That's about 15,000 truckloads of contamination on more than 4,400 properties. In some cases, we cannot remove all of the contamination on a property. We have to protect underground features like wires or structural items like foundations. We recognize that we haven't been clear enough about what this means, and we vow to do better. The USC East Yards Communities for Environmental Justice Occidental College study that was discussed in the LA Times and at a recent public meeting calls into the question our approach to this work and the results of the cleanup. And while there's a lot we don't know, and we won't know until we see the results of the study, the full results and methods used in the study, what is crystal clear is that DTSC needs to improve how we communicate with you about our work and how it impacts you. It is important that we get the full study and make sure that we understand it completely, because our understanding of the study's details can shed light on our work and help us determine where there are problems that we need to resolve. There are a number of items identified in the LA Times article that we can or already have addressed. For instance, you pushed us hard to take a street-by-street approach to the cleanup. We were reluctant. First of all, we wanted to clean up the most contaminated properties first. That's the way the cleanup plan has been structured. In addition, we're very concerned about the logistics and impacts on things like parking. But you pushed us, you advocated, and we adopted the street-by-street approach about a year ago, and it's been quite successful. This is just one example of how the community has improved the cleanup process. We're committed to integrating your input more fully in the future and to make significant changes in our meeting formats, how we track your requests, and how we make sure community input is incorporated into our decisions. For now, we want to use this meeting to set the stage for a new way of community engagement so we can continuously improve how we hear your concerns, how we share information, and how we incorporate your feedback. The type of meeting we have now, the virtual setting, it's not always conducive to really hearing your ideas. So we're exploring other ways of getting your input and guidance to shape our work and how we interact with you. Unfortunately, I can say right now, we probably won't have time this evening to answer all of the questions that come up in detail, but we will be out in the community in the coming weeks to make sure that we do have time for those conversations and to have more back and forth with you about your questions. We're reimagining how to integrate your feedback into issues like the contract bidding process or how we explain what we've done during a cleanup. I'd like to introduce you to Todd Sachs, our Deputy Director for the Site Mitigation and Remediation Program. Todd is relatively new to the department and brings a fresh perspective. He's going to share thoughts on new ways to work with you. Thank you. Todd?
Thanks, Meredith. So my name is Todd Sachs, and I am the Deputy Director for Site Mitigation and Restoration at DTSC. I started this position in the middle of November last year, about 3 months ago. In my past role, I saw the ways in which effective community engagement can lead to stronger environmental protection. And in this role, I'm committed to working with you on this cleanup to make sure it's protected. Since joining DTSC, I've had the benefit of speaking with some of the advocates in the community, have watched videos of previous meetings to understand the issues, and have been reading through the documents such as the removal action or cleanup plan that has guided our work in the residential communities surrounding Exide. It feels to me like DTSC is not a trusted voice in the community. The burden is on us to build that trust, and we must do so. And as Meredith just acknowledged, to get there, we will have to do things differently and demonstrate that change through sustained actions. Going forward, we are going to be taking a different and more transparent approach involving public meetings, outreach to advocates, and specific commitments to address community concerns. While we have some ideas about how to proceed, our approach isn't set in stone. It's really just a starting point for discussion. So when we break for comments, please make suggestions for us to consider. We do want to work together. I do see several areas where we can build transparency, improve our communication, and work much more collaboratively with all of you. First, it is clear that many of you are concerned about the removal actions already taken, and we want to be transparent about how we do our work. One important place to start is with the documentation we provide when we finish our work on a property. Up to now, we've made some of that documentation available to renters only by request. But going forward, we will make sure that renters receive all relevant information. That information is highly technical. We need to provide it in plain language and in multiple languages that's much clearer about the work done at each property, including the removal of soils and any residual contamination left on the property consistent with the implementation of the removal action cleanup plan. We would appreciate your feedback as we evolve those documents, and we hope you'll tell us what you expect to see in those documents either tonight or in future public meetings. Second, we would like to host a series of public meetings within the communities surrounding the former Exide facility. We expect these meetings will start the week of March 6th. Each of these meetings will be in the evening. We want them to be close to home, so it will be easy for you to join us to share your concerns and to get answers to your questions. At each of these meetings, we would make all of our letters of completion and associated documentation available for review and explain how the removal action cleanup plan and the overall cleanup process works. We would welcome any ideas you may have about where and when to host these meetings, information we would be sharing about these upcoming meetings, and ways for the public to provide additional information, comments, or suggestions for consideration. Third, We are looking at other opportunities to work collaboratively to address your concerns. For example, how we can provide greater opportunity for public input to the contracting process, and how we might strengthen our contractor oversight and additional steps we might take to give you confidence in the results of the cleanup. Our plans for doing so are still under development. Your thoughts would be welcome both tonight and in future meetings. Please understand there are legal requirements for contracting that must be met, and we are working through how to offer more public engagement while maintaining compliance with these requirements. We do plan to continuously evolve these approaches based on your feedback both tonight and in the future. And as I stated, the burden is on us to build trust with you. So if you have thoughts on these topics, we welcome them tonight and we'll see what we can do. If you have thoughts after tonight, please share them by emailing Dion Falk at dion.falk@dtsc.ca.gov. If you are interested in meeting with me directly, I'd be happy to do that as well. So please let Dion know and we will schedule it. With that, I'm going to pass the meeting over to Dion.
Thank you so much, Todd and Meredith, for your remarks. I appreciate it. For our meeting this evening, before we get into our questions and comments, I'd like to identify the individuals that will be speaking this evening and answering your questions and your comments. That would be Meredith Williams, Director of DTSC, which you've met, and Todd Sachs, Deputy Director of the Site Mitigation and Restoration Program. We have again Francesca Negri, Chief Deputy Director, and Lawrence Haffitz, Chief Counsel, and lastly, Mehdi Batahar, Assistant Deputy Director of Site Mitigation and Restoration. I welcome all of you to join the conversation when you feel the need to answer a question or make a comment. I'm going to go to the next slide, please. Okay, at this time, we want to hear from you, our community members. We welcome our community members' feedback, questions, comments. We just want to hear from you. We want to know what you have to say about Meredith's and Todd's comments and about the new engagement approach that we are starting. We have a lot of community members on the line right now, probably close to about 200. So we want to hear from everyone. In order to do that, we're going to need to limit the questions and comments to 3 minutes so that everyone can be heard this evening. I want to apologize in advance if I have to interrupt you when that 3-minute mark approaches. I will also repeat these instructions as new community members join the Zoom. If you choose, you can also email your questions. You can email us at exide@dtsc.ca.gov. The email inquiry that you send us will be treated the very same as if you make a comment on this meeting tonight. For members of the media who have joined us, please contact our PIO. Her name is Elizabeth Leslie Gassaway and I will give you her email address. It's Elizabeth.Leslie-at-dtsc.ca.gov with any inquiries you may have. For our community members, we have 4 ways for you to ask your questions or make your comments this evening. If you are participating on the Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature. At the bottom of your screen, you will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn to speak. If you dialed in, you can press *9 and join the phone queue. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn to speak. You can then press *6 to unmute your line. If you would like me to read your question, click the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen and type in your question. Please note that the chat feature will continue to be enabled for DTSC informational purposes, but you can use the Q&A feature for comments and questions. Lastly, if you called into our Spanish bridge, our interpreter will ask your questions for you. And again, we will need to limit our comments and questions to 3 minutes so that we can make sure that everyone on the line has an opportunity to be heard. So again, I apologize in advance. Please don't be mad at Dion. I apologize, but I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. Okay, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start taking your questions. I'm going to go to the raised hand feature and see if I have any questions. I do have several. So the first individual that I see is Mr. John Sermino. I hope that I did not mess up your name, John. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and let you go ahead and ask your question or make your comment. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, John. Go right ahead.
Yeah, my question is, why is NEC hiring workers without certification and without experience?
Okay.
That's the first question.
Okay. Go ahead.
I have several.
Okay.
Second question is there an investigation going on in the assault of a worker named by an employee of AIS? I want to know if that investigation is going on, and if not, how we can proceed to file those that grievance or complaint.
Okay. Did you have any other questions, John? Or will that end it for you?
I had two more, but you've already answered when you're going to have public meetings. I felt that was important.
Okay. You can go ahead. You still have time if you wanted to go ahead.
I have one more. So
Sure. Go right ahead, John.
why is NEC firing the community workers? Another question I have. So that's 4 questions. I want to leave it open for other people. So.
Okay. I appreciate that, John. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and turn that question to our director, Meredith, and also Todd, if you want to join in.
And actually, I was going to recommend that Mehdi speak to these questions.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with Mehdi.
Yep.
Sure. Mehdi?
On the issue of work without certification, and thank you so much for the question. We appreciate it, and thank you for bringing these to our attention. On the issue of NEC hiring without certification, I can tell you that the main requirements to be a worker at this site is to have the 40-hour HAZWAPER and the 8-hour refresher. That is a requirement. None of the workers, new or old, can work on this cleanup without having those, the 40-hour certification and the 8-hour refresher. In some instances, some workers have received an additional certification. It's not required for everybody, but there is a number of workers that need to be lead certified. That certification is required in certain instances. As far as firing community members, this is news to me. I can tell you that we are tracking the number of community members that are working on site. Recently, there was a change in the number of crews. We have reduced the number from 30 to 25 crews, but the condition was none of the work graduates were to be affected by this layoff. And this is an agreement we had with your community representatives, and we made the commitment to maintain the work graduates on the job, which is exactly what we did. So right now we have, I think, 71 or 72 workers. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we have maintained those workers on the job. As to the last question, I would probably direct it to Larry, because this is regarding the assault of one former employee. So Larry, if you can take it from here, that would be great.
Sure, Mehdi, thanks very much. Sir, we just recently became aware of the claims of assault on the workplace, and we certainly take workplace violence extremely seriously. We intend to look into it very carefully. I would be happy to talk to you offline. We don't have any answers for you tonight, but I don't have much background on the issue yet. We intend to get more. But like I said, this is not something we would take lightly. It may involve contacting local law enforcement. These are questions still to be remained. We may need to be discussing further with the Attorney General's office. We are in the early stages of this claim, and we will look at it closely. And I'm happy to talk to you at another time to get more information and understanding of the claim.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I'm going to go to our next community member. I see that Christian Lemus has his hand raised. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and unmute, Christian.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Christian. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read off what I have written here, just so I don't forget. But
Okay.
I've attended many meetings, and I haven't really felt represented. You know, there's been a lot of noise in the media and disgruntled ex-employees and interest group putting words in our mouth. And so I'm here to speak on behalf of the current employees who are working hard and taking the environmental disaster serious. First of all, we are very happy, extremely happy with our current contractor, AIS. We're being treated with the most respect possible. And it's amazing to be part of a contractor that not only helps the community be safer, but also enhances the life of all those employed. And it's a shame and utter disrespect that DTSC is looking for a way out of the responsibility to clean up the community and looking for any false negative story to stop the funding. Instead of listening to ex-employees who did not take their responsibility serious, why not listen to the couple hundred local community members currently working with pride and integrity at the Exide cleanup? What we are doing is a great benefit to the community, and DTSC needs to stop playing politics waiting for federal funds and stop trying to cop out of the responsibility to this community. Stop listening to the minority and listen to the majority of us. We need this job. The people need their house debt free. So my question is, what will you do to keep us employed, to feed our family, and keep the community debt free? That's it.
Thank you so much for that, Christian. I felt your passion. Thank you for calling in and making that comment. I'm going to go ahead and ask Meredith to respond.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you for the work you're doing to help remove the lead from the community and help people get rid of the exposure. And I appreciate your perspective on your experience working on the cleanup. I would also add that we are very committed to seeing the cleanup move forward. I would say that our request to US EPA to list the site as a national priorities list Superfund site is really about an all hands on deck approach. There are resources that the federal government has that we don't have. There is expertise that we may be able to bring into to bear on the cleanup. And I think there are very good opportunities to do that. There are parts of the area surrounding the facility that we have not received funding for, not that the legislature, that the community, that the administration isn't committed to addressing all the contamination. But if there are other resources that can accelerate the cleanup of those areas, that's something to think about very seriously and to investigate. We feel as though we would be remiss if we didn't ask US EPA to participate in the cleanup and bring their resources into the fold. And we collaborate with them. We're collaborating with them now as they go through their evaluation about whether or not the facility and the surrounding areas qualify as a Superfund site. That does not mean we have any expectation of stopping our work. As long as we have funding, we will continue to do the work. And You know, we know we have funding for an additional approximately 2,000 homes was, you know, that was what was made available in the last funding cycle. And we will keep working and keep the work going as long as we can.
Thank you so much for that, Meredith. Appreciate you. I'm gonna
Maddie,
go to,
Maddie, did you have anything to add or talk?
Very quickly, thank you, Meredith. I think it's an opportunity for us, Christian, to thank you and thank your coworkers in the field for the hard work you guys are doing. As you could see, we have not stopped work all along, even at the highest of the pandemic. Thanks to you and your colleagues, we have continued this work uninterrupted. So it has never been our intention to slow down or do anything different. You have seen it in the ground. And to reiterate Meredith's commitment, we are committed to continuing the work, and that has not changed.
did you want to add anything, Todd, before I go to our next question?
No, I think that was answered well.
Okay,
So,
thank
get the
you.
next
Just
one.
wanted to make sure I didn't cut you off. Okay, we're going to go to Sophia Quinones. Sophia, please go ahead and unmute your line and ask your question. Sophia, are you there? Okay, I'm going to go to the next caller. I have Juan Flores. Juan,
Hello,
please go ahead and unmute. Hi, Juan, how are you?
I'm good, Dion. Thanks for calling on me.
Yes.
So my name is Juan Flores, and I'm currently a community worker that's employed with AIS. And like Christian was saying earlier, that they're saying a lot of bad stuff about the company, that they don't take care of us as the workers. And I just want to speak for myself that and my colleagues that this company treats us very fair, gives us a lot of opportunity and a lot of respect, and they really care about cleaning up the environment. So I think it's really important that we work together on cleaning the environment, keeping this program going. We can't stop. We got to take care of the community that's been suffering for a long time. I noticed there's a lot of people that are sick, and it's really important that we continue with our effort in cleaning the environment, cleaning the community, and making it a better place for the new generation and the people that are living there at the moment. And I just want to know that, or just let you know that I'm really thankful for this opportunity, for me being a community worker and this whole program. And I've been able to grow a lot and learn a lot in this industry. And I can tell you that I work every day with so much love and so much passion to make it a better place. And it feels so good to be able to help. So I just want to say that it's important that we don't stop this program, and we don't, and also the other ex-employees that are maybe complaining about the company, a lot of them, they didn't take it too serious. And that's why maybe if they got let go or got fired, it's because they weren't taking it serious. And it's still like, I know we're community workers, and some people, they think that like we don't have to work that hard because we're from the community workers, but it's important that we do work hard, and that way it's just better for the whole program that everyone does 110% of their effort. And that's about it for me, Dion. Thanks for picking on me.
Thank you so much for that, Juan. We felt your passion, and we're glad that you had an opportunity to come in and express yourself here this evening. I'm going to go to, we have one of our ETAG members on the call, Pete Reyes. Pete, how are you? I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line and go ahead and ask you to ask your question or make your comment. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Dion. It's nice to see to have I don't think we've ever had 200 members. So it's very interesting to see that many people are here involved.
Yes.
And I'm happy to hear all these positive interactions, right? So 2 things I want to just make sure I get across. One is we finally were able to shake things up, right? Because I've definitely have tried contacting Meredith, contacting DTSC. So I find it interesting that the tone today is like, okay, let's sit down and talk. I don't think it had to get to this point. To answer the questions of guys saying that regardless of why you get fired or not, to say that because of your efforts you're getting fired, I don't think is right. But I will say this, the proof is always in the pudding, right? So if the LA Times was able to pull up and say an article or publish an article that indicates and proves what I've been saying this whole time all along, there's something there. If you have contractors that want to I don't want to say make excuses, but AIS laid off a certain amount of people this last layoff on December 25th. Those were all hired by SFNS. Whether that's a coincidence or not, or if the contractor's trying to prove a point, I don't know. But my thing is, if you have a worker who died 3 days after having his foot basically amputated by a worker that wasn't supposed to be in the machinery, and OSHA finds AIS for these situations, there's something wrong there. If a worker gets his lungs punctured and DTSC, Medi, informs us of what happened and it doesn't get reported, there's something wrong there. So I just want to make sure that I do love the approach that you guys had today, but where was this 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 10 months ago when I've been pushing for this? I've been pushing for this since Parsons. There is a lot of tension between workers and community workers, and even between us, we're fighting. That's fine. I just want the truth to come out. And as long as we're able to unite and we can find this opportunity with Todd, with Meredith, with Medi, whoever, to unite. And I spoke to this with Medi, and I'm not here for the first time trying to speak up. I've been speaking, I've been at every single meeting. I've met with Grant on several occasions before this. So it's not like it's my first time. Whether I have credibility or not, I leave that up in your hands, but I do think it's time to change. There's a reason I'm part of the board, and I hope at some point we can meet and discuss and move forward and stop pointing the fingers and try to unite as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you for participating as an ETAG member. Your comments are always appreciated and your feedback. So I'm going to see if Meredith wants to respond.
Thanks, Pete, and it's good to hear from you tonight. And you have been very, very consistent. You've showed up. You've stayed engaged. You've shared your experience with us, and there's a reason it was important to get you on the ETAG, was because you are so dedicated to this cleanup and to seeing that it's done properly. I will say the article, seeing things in print, there were some lessons to be learned there. I spoke, for instance, about the communication at the end of the cleanup process. At the end of the cleanup process, we walked through the property with the property owner and any of the residents. We look at where the excavation occurred and where it didn't occur, and where it didn't occur, we explain that. And then we follow that up in writing. I will tell you, it takes a long time for the follow-up in writing, and because it's technical, because there are lab analyses that have to go with it. And so as a result, folks probably aren't really understanding that, we hit a conduit, so we couldn't go down the full 18 inches. These are the things that were highlighted in the article that really help us understand our obligation to facilitate a better understanding about where there might be contamination, what the risk is around that contamination, whether it's problematic, whether there's a route of exposure that should be a cause for concern. And that is the work that we will be doing in the coming weeks and months, which is really digging into these things. We don't have the study results. We don't know where the elevated lead levels were found. And there's a big difference between finding an elevated lead level where, for instance, there was excavation and clean fill versus one where there was a retaining wall and we knew we couldn't excavate all the soil. So that's a conversation we need to be having. I count on you being in that conversation as we move forward. And I know you have a lot of opinions and insights, and we will look forward to hearing those.
Meredith, if I could just say something briefly, you know, Pete, we haven't met before, but I appreciate your comments, and obviously we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of issues between us and the folks in the community, some of whom have been saying the same stuff you have, and also have said they haven't really felt heard. So we have some work to do there, and we will do that. I guess I had a question for you, which is, have you thought about if there are better ways to communicate, or do you think the ETAG process works well? And if you don't think it does, are there other models you think might work?
I do think I definitely have suggestions, but I feel that the ETAG and this meeting is always the same thing. I feel like Mehdi conducts it, he gives his presentation, and there's no really interaction as far as an ETAG board where we sit and discuss and be like, hey, what do we need to talk about? I think that would help, but I would definitely want to include Mark, Rania, and anybody else that belongs to the ETAG that's present to chime in. I think the only thing I would like to say is that it takes a village. And in Spanish, se dice, el pueblo unido jamás será vencido. And between the three of us, we've always been fighting for what we think is best. It might not sit well with everyone, but I do think it's important to note that I don't want to go in the wrong way. Like I said, I want to start positive. I don't want to say anything negative, but I do think it's important for us to meet in person and take it from there. Because I have been doing this pro bono, but at some point I feel like there has to be some type, I feel like I'm doing a job that should be done either by DTSC or somebody in the contractor, right? But I do think that it needs to be addressed differently, but I wouldn't want to make a decision without everybody on board.
I'm just going to thank you again, Pete, for that comment. I agree with you completely about the ETAG meetings and the fact that they have not been as dynamic, as interactive, as informative, quite frankly, as they were when we were in person. We were sitting around the table and we could actually have a conversation as opposed to, raising hands. It's hard in this format to go back and forth. And we need to find our way back to an ETAG, not necessarily the old model, but to a model that is where the ETAG is really informing the work fully.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Pete. We appreciate you. At this time, I'm going to go to Maria Estrada, community member. Hi, Maria. Please go ahead and unmute your line. Ask your question.
Hi, thank you for calling on me. First, I'd just like to state that it is kind of a slap in the face to the people affected by this catastrophe that the DTSC has been assigned to oversee the cleanup when we know that the DTSC was complicit in the contamination and was aware of what was going on for decades. So the DTSC, which completely, if you believe what's happened, the DTSC had no knowledge, or it was only Exide that did this, and they weren't aware. But we know that the DTSC was in fact aware, and not only did they were complicit and allowed it to happen, when they were finally shut down, the DTSC actually helped Exide to ensure that the radius of the contamination was stated to be a lot less than what it was. And the DTSC is actually culpable for what's transpired, as is Cal OSHA, as is Department of Public Health, as is the AQMD. So let's just state that right now. The DTSC is part of the problem, and it is one of the reasons why the community does not trust the DTSC, because the DTSC was informed for many years and was aware of what's happening. Either that, or you people are just so inept that you just didn't see what was happening. Aside from that, now that this cleanup is happening, which we know is not being properly cleaned up, and there's cross-contamination, there's no oversight over these contractors who are cleaning, quote unquote, cleaning these communities. And there is definite prejudices against our communities from these people, specifically NEC, which I can tell you that the owners of the NEC have purchased $2 million homes in Orange County since they've gotten this contract. There's also a lot of labor law violations, and the fact that the staff are not being paid the amount that's required on the government contract, which also is against the law. Aside from that, the DTSC is not doing anything to make sure that these homes are being properly cleaned. Despite the protocol that you state that you're doing, we know that these homes are not being properly cleaned. And it's been over, it's going to be 7 years. And there's a fraction of the homes that have been cleaned. And there was just a study that was done. And out of 90 something homes, over 70 homes are still contaminated. So you're not doing a good job. The people that you're hiring are not doing a good job. So how is this going to be rectified when we could have meetings all we want, but until action is taken to get this properly addressed, this isn't going to change. And that is why the community does not trust the DTSC. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. We appreciate your comments. I want to see if Meredith will.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a very general statement and turn it over to Todd and Mehdi, but
Okay.
Just to start and to acknowledge the failure of government writ large in terms of protecting the community. I would say we didn't put a permit in place. We didn't take a strong, swift enforcement action. And we have to own that, and we have to acknowledge that there's the foundation. And so for us to ask the community to trust us on top of that foundation, that's asking a lot. And so our work is to just keep showing up, keep learning, and keep doing a better and better job on the cleanup. I'm going to pause there and ask Todd and Mehdi to speak to some of your other points.
Yeah, I want to start just by listing what Maria said, because just to, make sure I'm getting it all. But, there's the issue with government being complicit, the idea that the radius is too small around Exide, the issue of potential cross-contamination, labor law issues, that we're not doing enough to hold people accountable. So first of all, I want to say I hear you on all of that. And obviously we don't necessarily see all those issues in the same way, but we want to understand your perspective so that we can better investigate those issues, get to the bottom of it, and then do that in a way where the results of that are something that we can all have confidence in. There are a lot of reasons, as you've mentioned, why many people in the community don't trust us. That's actually one of the reasons why I came to DTSC, is because, the Exide situation in particular, it's pretty unprecedented. It's a very serious issue. There's a lot of people working at DTSC on this all the time, trying to make sure that we're making the community safer. And you've raised a lot of issues as to how we're not doing that well enough, and that we need to get to the bottom of. I just would say that we're all motivated by the same thing. Here, we all care about the community. We're all trying to do what we can to make it better, and to clean up this mess that happened. So I'm looking forward to meeting with you when we go down there, and we'll work through some of these issues.
All right. Thank you so much, Meredith and Todd. Thank you for that question. That was a really good, compelling question. And it shows us that we do need to build our trust. And so we're working on it. Thank you for that question. I'm going to go to Sophia Quinones. I hope I did not mess up your name too much. But Sophia, if you can go ahead and unmute your line, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello,
Sophia,
can you,
I can hear you now, Sophia. Go right ahead.
thank you. I'm also very concerned. From the beginning, the cleanup has been done wrong, and the state failed to properly represent the public in the cases against Exide and Quometco. And for us, it demonstrates the prima facie case of professional misconduct by the attorneys involved in this lawsuit. We want this to be a Superfund site. Because it should have been a Superfund site decades ago. So we claim genocide, and the DTSC is a part of that genocide because the way it extracted the soil and how it took it into a different area and didn't even notify that community. Everyone's talking. I know the workers have their issues. At this point, if the federal government comes in, those workers that are doing a good job, they need to keep their employment. But I'm always so worried about them. There was no, one of the last meetings, there's no decontamination process. And I think from the beginning, the science was flawed. Because you look at blood samples as a way of testing how much lead we've been exposed to, but there are other machines. And unfortunately, the focus has been on cleaning up the soil and not the people who are sick, the families that have died, who have dealt with the illnesses all across our community at a larger radius. It was a cover-up sanctioned by the state, a state-sanctioned poisoning. So we need to bring in the federal government. We need Michael Reagan here, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra, the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, so that we can work with all the institutions to create a long-term healthcare plan to deal with our illnesses, a long-term educational plan. I just finished meeting with our representatives, Ms. Rivas, to talk to the superintendent so that we can deal with the superintendent, the U.S. Secretary of Education, so that we have a long-term educational plan, because this lead will affect the brains of our children and our bodies and forever, in perpetuity. And I think this is the problem. We as a community must come together in the name of humanity to clean up these toxins. Now, some of you are guilty, other of you are innocent, but at this point, there's no looking back. We must move forward and have the federal government involved, because we need funding to clean this up. So we look forward to working with the federal government, but we also want to look at how lead affects us, because we are in communities that are contaminated by a lot of other toxins that are not talked about. And so the potency of lead is now magnified because it is mixed with a cocktail of toxins around our neighborhoods. This is environmental racism. We live in a designated green zone. So I want to keep in touch with those of the people that are on the line that want to make a difference. My number is 323-494-6005, but we claim genocide, and the DTSC and the state are responsible for that, and they have failed to clean up our communities, and they have failed to deal with.
Thank you much, Sophia. I appreciate, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure we have a lot of hands up. So I want to make sure that we get to everyone. I wanted to go and see if Meredith has any comments or any response that she'd like to share.
That's a lot to hear. Sophia, thank you for bringing your passion and the sense of urgency around the health impacts, not only from Exide, but from all the other sources of pollution and stressors that this community experiences. I'm going to say this, and it's going to be hard for some folks to hear. I believe in the work that we are doing. I believe that if there is residual lead on properties, that residual lead would be consistent with our cleanup plan. And in those cases, we tell homeowners, hey, we may need to come back and do more. And we may need to revisit that. But fundamentally, I believe that the quality of the work will bear out as we move forward. That said, there are so many opportunities for us to do better, for us to do more, for us to work with other agencies, other partners. I mean, we have the example of the lead paint abatement and how we've been able to use the soil cleanup to try to bring more awareness around lead paint inside the homes, and provide that opportunity for people to get that remediated. That's just one small example of the kind of all hands on deck approach that you're pushing for. And, you know, the trust in the federal government cannot be ignored. If there's more trust in what US EPA can bring to this, bring to this community, we have to acknowledge this. As I said, this is decades of mistrust, and we are going to keep showing up, keep doing the work, continue to try to improve how we do the work. And that does not preclude bringing in other agencies that might add even more value to the work that we're doing.
Meredith, you mind if I say a few things? First off, Sophia, one of the things you said actually really kind of resonated with me, the idea of looking at this from a healthcare perspective. And so maybe that's something we can work on, because I know there's interest in that, and it would be a good thing, I think, to work on. The other thing I wanted to just point out, because, you know, I've previously worked in the air pollution world and have been working on and off on EJ issues, for environmental justice issues, for, I don't know, the last 20 something years. And, you know, one of the things we are dealing with in California is the close proximity of pollution sources to people who live in these communities. And I think what you're pointing out is that is a problem. And I think, you know, the fact that all of the boards and departments at Cal EPA, the fact that all of state government really is trying to work on these issues is reflective of the fact that these types of exposures and issues that communities are seeing across the state, not just around Exide, are serious and need to be dealt with. And so I think you raise a really important issue. It's something we're all working on. It's part of the reason why we implemented the removal action as quickly as we could, because we wanted to get as much of the gross contamination out of the community as possible. And that's what our team has been working to do. It's one part of the broader effort. Bringing in the federal government is going to be very helpful for that. But, you know, I think, like you said, we're all going to have to work together to try to address the issues caused by lead contamination in these communities. And we have a lot of work to do. So look forward to working with you and others in the community to do that.
Thank you both for those responses. I think that they were really close and relevant to some of her comments that she had this evening. So thank you both, Meredith and Todd, for that. I will go to, I have a caller and the initials are MSC. MSC, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go right ahead.
Hi, it's Danielle. That's my partner's initials. Anyway, so we're new to the neighborhood, and we just want to understand, like, how if there's any way in which the edge of this how do you say, can you help me? How was the preliminary investigative area determined, and what happens if the property is outside of that line? Is there any testing going to happen for properties just outside of the line? What other questions? Yeah, it's basically, as other people have said, this preliminary line doesn't seem to be actually account for the fact that the lead is probably outside of that. So we just want to understand what's the deal about that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. Welcome to the neighborhood, and thank you so much for joining us and getting the information. I'd like to see which one of our presenters would like to answer that response.
I'll take a shot at it. So we established a 1.7 mile radius around the facility because when we evaluated all of the information at the time that we had available to us in 2017, when we were designing the removal action plan, pointed to that being sort of the maximum extent of the impacts that would be caused by the Exide facility. We're always interested in more information, so we're happy to look at that and look at additional details and potentially revisit it. But that was the information we have, and so because the removal action is essentially a priority focus on the most contaminated homes first, we're still working on the most contaminated homes within that radius. So hopefully that helps.
It does help. Thank you so much, Todd. I'd like to see if Meredith, did you want to add anything? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. And again, welcome to the neighborhood. And of course, you can contact DTSC anytime if you'd like to get additional information. If you want to take down my email address, I'm happy to forward you some information on the project itself and provide any additional questions or feedbacks that you may need or you may have. My email address is dion.falk@dtsc.ca.gov. Again, that's DIONNE.FAULK @dtsc.ca.gov. So happy to provide any additional information you and your husband are looking for. I am going to go to Clara Solis. Clara, please go ahead and unmute your line and let us hear from you.
Hi, I agree with what Sofia Quinones said about children who have been exposed to lead and that we need to look at this as a healthcare problem. We know that children for decades have been exposed to Exide lead. We know that no amount of lead is acceptable. In failing to require the permits, this lead contamination is also the fault of the state. And the state should do something to make all of those harmed by this lead contamination whole. It should do something for, as Sophia said, for the students who have been harmed by this, for the health of the people who have been harmed by this. I am concerned. I attended the meeting at USC, and I am concerned that a lot of these properties that were cleaned up are still contaminated. In fact, they said more than 50% of the cleaned up properties had more than 200 parts per million of contamination. I understand that they were taking 3 soil samples from different parts. So I would like to know, in particular, after a property is cleaned, is it independently tested to make sure that it was actually cleaned? That's one of my questions. My other question and concern is that it doesn't appear in setting the boundaries, it doesn't appear that you found where the lead stops. That's what we took away from this meeting, since 97% of the properties within the area were contaminated. If you went outside it, you would find, and that's what they found, 97% of the properties are contaminated. So when are you going to face that you are not listening to the community because you didn't expand the testing area? You haven't been listening. I mean, Pete has been there at all these meetings. He's been a good advocate. The workers, we appreciate the work that they're doing. We know they care, but something is going wrong with this cleanup. What happened with this money for the parkways cleanup? Why did you waste that money? These are some of the questions that I would like to hear answers for. And when are you going to expand the cleanup area? Oh, and my final question is, if the EPA designates it a cleanup site, what guarantee do we have that they will use the 80 parts per million standard that California has rather than the federal levels?
Okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for those questions. We appreciate you. I'm going to ask Meredith to see if
Actually,
she or Todd.
I'll
Okay.
take it, Dion.
Sure,
So
thanks.
there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm going to go through and try to address them, although not necessarily in order. And then perhaps if I don't answer something, feel free to call me on it and I'll answer it. So starting sort of, we worked on developing the removal action in 2017. And a removal action is something that we do to just try to reduce the worst of the contamination at a site. And you do it quickly because of the concern about exposures in the community. And so we've been doing that. The removal action plan went through a public process. We had several workshops. We had more than 1,000 public comments. And then we finalized that plan, which essentially governs the way the contractors do the work. And so when those contractors do the work, we have staff on site and we work to make sure that the work is done in accordance with the plan. Now, as Meredith mentioned in the outset, there are some times when not all of the contaminated soil is removed from the property. We don't dig too close to like a house, for example, because we don't want the house to collapse if we dig under it. And we don't want to remove hardscape or trees unless the property owner tells us they want the tree removed, because we're out to remove lead contamination from soils and we don't want to do things that a property owner wouldn't want us to do. So that does mean that at some sites, and the LA Times story documented this because it was documented in our own letters of closure, that at some of the sites we've cleaned up, there are some residual lead soils left in. And when they are, the letters of closure have information that include things like pictures and drawings and schematics that show exactly where the lead was removed and where it wasn't. You asked about the 1.7 mile radius. Like I said before, we worked to determine that radius based on the best available information we had at the time. And the determination was made that that was the area within which we thought Exide had polluted. Not necessarily outside. We were not assuming that outside of the areas we would find no lead. We were assuming that within the 1.7 mile area, we would find the highest levels of contamination. And we've been working to remove all of that contamination. When we did the sampling, we did go out as far as 4 miles away, but we used the data that we use the data that we have to assess the 1.7 mile range. But all that being said, a number of you in the community are asking questions about whether the 1.7 mile radius is appropriate. And so that's something we're going to have to work through in the public discussions, not just in the community meetings, but also with the ETAG as well. You mentioned the healthcare issue and that the state should do something to make the community whole. I would say we're trying to do that by the work we're doing right now, but we have a long way to go. And so, we're just going to have to keep working and seeing what additional steps we can take, bring in the federal government to help, and to try to do everything we can to make sure that the site is ultimately cleaned up as thoroughly as we can make it cleaned up. You asked finally about a couple things. One was the parkways. The parkways are the area between the road and the sidewalk in many parts of the community. And those were not prioritized for cleanup under the removal action because we wanted to focus on people's houses that were the most contaminated first. We wanted to do that because our goal is to protect public health, and the most public health protection we can get as quickly as possible is removing as much contaminated soil as we can from the most contaminated homes first. And finally, you asked about the EPA designation and the 80 ppm requirement. The 80 ppm cleanup level that we are working towards in the removal action plan is something that we've set at the state. The federal government at this point doesn't have as stringent as a requirement, but they are revisiting their own statistical analysis as well. So that'll have to be part of the discussions, and it's something we are concerned about as you are, and we'll work through it as we get to it. We have a long way to go to clean up this site.
Thank you so much for that, Todd. Very thorough answer. I hope that everyone was able to note the responses. So that was very thorough. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. I'm gonna see if we can go to our next caller right now. I have Tony on the line. Tony, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute your line. Feel free to ask your question at this time.
Hello?
Yes. Hi, Tony. How are you?
Hi, pretty good.
Go right ahead.
Sorry about that. So let me get to the question.
Mhm.
My question is, how are the schools that border the contamination sites being notified? How are they notifying the parents? Another thing is, I believe the $750 million that was that Exide had to pay while going bankrupt. Can we use some of that money to actually advertise on buildings, commercials, around the neighborhoods of contamination, or even larger, to actually notify people of if you guys want to be as transparent as possible, allow people, because not a lot of people still know about this. The fact that there's only 200 members or calling right now, that's pretty shameful. That means that's not even a lot of people. That to me is a very small number. Another thing is, shame on all of those that were working during this, that permitted Exide to contaminate for so long. And not all of you are guilty. Please, the new people working there, please help us bring that trust that has been destroyed or annihilated or eradicated or whatever has been killed off. Please bring that back, because the people that are answering the questions too, if you guys were, veterans that allowed this to, you guys are giving us answers of problems you caused. Your solutions are from problems you caused, that you permitted. You guys are cleaning up your own mistakes as cheaply as possible. To me, it's very shameful. You know who you are. Having lost family members, I can't express the loss of. It's very sad. To me, it's even more sad that there is a price on people's house, and it's $750 million. So anybody's health has a price. And then that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. We appreciate you for calling in, taking the time to participate here this evening. I'm going to go to another community member, Adelmas.
If I could take a minute.
Yes, okay.
Just respond to that. Just thank you for those comments. Thank you for showing up and for challenging us to continue to build trust, for you to even show up when that's, when you feel as betrayed as you do. It takes a lot, and we appreciate it. There's no way for us to build trust if there's not somebody else that we can engage in and do the work and do it better. And of course, it sounds like you have some very personal experience and suffering within your family and your community. And again, this is why the work is so urgent. and why we just have to keep working to make it better, to find the opportunities. So I do hope that you will stay engaged. Oh, I do want to speak to the schools issue, or ask that Mehdi speak to that. Could you, Mehdi?
Yes,
And sorry, I'm just going to get carried away. I actually really like the billboard idea. And that's the kind of idea that, you know, how do you think we can communicate better? I don't know that there's any obstacle to us pursuing that. So those are the kinds of ideas we hope to hear as we move forward.
Thank you so much. I'll start by saying, Tony, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's never easy for any of us to hear a story like this, but we are aware and we have all stepped in our roles, some of us recently, and it's regardless, it's a very painful experience to go through. And with that said, going to your questions, at least I have two questions I have here and one clarification regarding the $750 million. That is expected, that's the estimated total to completion. We have not spent $750 million. As far as the schools go, and Dion can add at the end if she has anything to add, all schools are properly notified. When you are within the PIA, none of the properties, let alone schools, none of the properties gets excavated without proper notification to schools. And the rule 1466 by AQMD, the work is not done during the school hours. We have to wait until the schools are closed. So in the past, some property owners complained that their property was not cleaned quick enough. One of the reasons, if they were next to a school, is we couldn't conduct that work. We had to wait for the school recess to start that work. And I know that the notification is very broad. Dion and her group speak to the school superintendent and principals, but in LA, I know that we communicate also with the with other agencies. So Dion, if you can take it from here about the notification, that would be good.
Yes, so thank you so much, Mehdi. I was just going to say that we do work with our schools, and when there is a property that's adjacent to one of our schools, we will put that property's cleanup on hold, and we'll wait until the schools are out of session for either the summer or the Christmas break or the spring break. So we work very closely with our schools. We try and connect with them regularly. We let them know what's happening. And then we also coordinate around the schools to make sure that we do not inconvenience them, but then also we are in compliance with how we deal with our kids. Our kids are priority number one. I personally feel like our children are very important in the PIA, and we all work together to prioritize our kids, our elderly, and make sure that they're informed, and we work with them and make sure that they understand what's happening at all times. So we have a great team as far as our public engagement, and we do work together on that. So thank you for letting me add that in, Mehdi. I appreciate it. I'm going to switch gears and go to our Q&A. Right now, I do have an anonymous question. So whoever would want to answer that, please jump in. The question is, do you know who's getting the next contract? Are we getting a better contractor or the same one? If we have the same ones, how can you guarantee that there will be a change with all the community concerns? So that is the question. It's an anonymous question. Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll take it and try to answer it at a high level. So we are currently working with NEC, which has a current contract, and we're working to hold them accountable as we have been throughout this whole process. I know many of you think we need to be doing better and more, and I think we can sit down with ETAG and the community and those of you in the community who are interested in this issue, and we can see what more we can do. There is going to be another solicitation for the next contract. And we're trying to look at ways in which we can involve the community more in decision-making, in the design of the contract and the requirements to help make sure that we're holding the contractor accountable, but also making sure that we're covering all of the issues that those of you in the community want covered to ensure that the contractor is operating properly. We of course want the same things, so the information you add will be helpful for us. So we're going to be working on that. That's going to be part of the discussions we'll have both in the public meetings and coming up with different advocates and ETAG. But we're going to need to work together to solve that issue, and we are going to dig in with you on it.
Thank you so much for that, Todd. Appreciate it. We have a question in the Q&A feature from R Gamma. And the question is, has DTSC discussed at what point the federal government would be brought in? So I don't know who would like to take on that question.
I'll take it and try to answer it quickly. We're already starting discussions with EPA. We've asked that they prioritize the Exide site by putting it what's called in the national priorities list. And we're in discussions with EPA about this facility as it is right now. So that process has started.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. This is a question from Martha Jimenez. Not quite sure if we can answer this one, but the question is, has DTSC identified cancer clusters throughout the 7.1 Exide polluted area? So I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on that. That might be one we cannot answer.
I'm not aware that we have, but I think we'd be happy to, whoever asked that question, if you want to get in contact with me, I'd certainly be interested in hearing more about ideas or any knowledge you have about people who have cancer in the area, and we can go from there. I think it sort of relates to the healthcare questions that were also raised earlier.
Okay. We do have an anonymous question. That question is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about the nepotism in the workforce? All the workers are related or friends. I'm reading that verbatim, so I don't know if there's someone that wants to jump in on that one.
Mehdi, I may ask you to step in here because I don't know as much about it. What I would say is that kind of thing is something we need to look at.
We can look into it, but keep in mind that we're talking about the contractor. What we verify on our end is making sure that the contractor is complying with all rules and regulations. That's what we do on our end. The second thing that we verify and we control is the compliance with the project labor agreement, the contract in the sense that we have with the union, and we want to make sure that the contractor achieve all the targets, all the goals established, including the 50% new environmental, which includes the community workers. So this conversation, I think, Todd, we can have it maybe later and see where the feedback is and how we can actually include it, if anything.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question is from Jose. Jose is asking, can you address if USC will share the soil sampling study with DTSC?
I think you'd have to ask USC that question. I would just say that as a scientist, having access to information, we're going to try to be as transparent as possible and to try to enhance that even more because we respect the community and we respect science.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Todd. I'm going to go transition to the bridge line. Freddie, can you please check in with our interpreter and see if we have any questions from our community members that are listening on the bridge line? Freddie?
There are no questions as of now.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go back to the raised hand feature. I see Veta Gasquet. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Vita, it might be Vita. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. One of the questions that I have is regarding bone density testing. We need that immediately in our neighborhoods because we know that the blood test does not adequately show the lead exposure that's possibly our bodies are containing. I'm in Boyle Heights and we are outside of the 1.7 mile radius. I've been aware of Exide since 2013. And just to survive living here, you kind of almost have to forget that we even have lead around us and everywhere. We also created a group, and when I say everywhere, I'm talking about our parks, our elementary schools. Have our elementary schools been cleaned up? Have our parks been cleaned up? We need information. There's still people in our community that do not know about Exide. And they're educated. Okay, I know somebody who has lived here 30 years, has a degree and never heard about Exide. Where are the brochures that explain about what has happened here? We also agree with the Superfund site. We're also happy that East Yards has a testing kit and they're going to do independent testing of our yards. We also agree with billboards. Billboards are great, brochures. And I go to White Memorial. Whenever I have doctor visits, I always ask my nurses, the doctors, if they've heard of Exide, if they've heard of the lead contamination. And just this, when did I have, just this week, I had an appointment and all three, the nurse that was helping me worked in White Memorial for 20 years, has never heard of Exide. The doctor hadn't heard of Exide. They don't know about the lead. How is it that our hospitals do not know about this? The workers do not know about this. So when we ask for lead testing or we want to be blood tested, which is not sufficient, we want the bone density testing. So we need money for that. Also, I know people who have been whistleblowers who've expressed frustration on how the cleanup was going, who were fired from the company because they care about our community and they weren't. And I'm not saying these workers that have called in, but there's people, those are the workers that possibly are the ones that are not really taking it as serious, and they're just, I mean, it's hard work no matter what, but I know that the people who have exposed what was going on, it's been going on for like 2 years or more, 3 years. I've been hearing about people who've been hired and they've never, they were fired for telling the truth, that the protocols and the procedures were not being done correctly and that they were repoisoning the areas. I'm also the founder of First Blocks of Whittier Boulevard. Excuse me, ma'am. Yes, you gave another person a lot of time in the very beginning, and I want to say this: we're a community group, and we've done community cleanups. We've done community cleanups. We've done community cleanups, and we're exposing ourselves to this stuff because we're tired of. We have 40 years of no street sweeping on our major streets. We have the largest freeway interchange system in North America running through Boyle Heights, and none of those underpasses have been cleaned, and we're out there cleaning it with face masks. We're putting ourselves in danger and we need support.
Thank you so much for that, Vita. We appreciate it. We have a lot of hands raised. I want to make sure we get to as many people as possible. I wanted to check in with one of our presenters and see if anybody wants to comment on Vita's questions.
Very quickly, thank you so much. Very quickly, I wanted to speak a little bit about the school, the parks, and the daycare, because that's a very important point. To date, we have cleaned up 77 schools, parks, and daycares. We are in contact with the licensing agency for the daycares because those daycares, for the majority, are run out of homes, private homes. So we want to make sure that we put those as a priority. And I can tell you that all of the schools, parks, and daycares within that 1.7 mile have been completed. And the second point, which is important, and I want to go back to that project labor agreement, because at the end of the day, this is a contract that we had with the unions. When employees have issues or they have grievances, they have to go to the union and complain. They have to, because that's the first line of defense. And obviously, we have not ignored any of the complaints to date. None of them were ignored. We have followed up, including the most difficult cases and the most, I would say, some of the grievances we have followed up directly with. But I am encouraging employee, if there is any issue, they need to contact their union first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehdi. We are going to go to Jose Montellano. Jose, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. Please go ahead and ask your question. Jose, are you there? Okay, I'm going to go to the next caller. I see Sonia. Jose?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I can hear you now,
Yes.
Jose. Sorry about that. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry about that too. I have just a few things to say that I work with a lot of construction companies. I worked with a project going under the Metro Underground, and we hit a lot of methane pockets, a lot of contaminated water. But I'm working for SFNS, and it's a small crew, but I see how dedicated they are in the work. I'm not just saying this for the company, but I'm saying it because I've been in the union for over 20 years. I'm an operating engineer. And they ask you in SFNS, they want all your qualifications. So those that are saying that we're not qualified, we are qualified. Some of us have worked for years. I'm working with a crew it's a 5-man crew, and nobody's related. You know, when the union sends you, they send you to one place. If you have a family member in the union, they might send them to the same place too, but a different crew. But that's the union. Now, we know in our company what we do is every day we talk to the community. I've heard people talking that they're in the community right now. I live in the community. I'm on the outskirts of the community, what's not contaminated. I'm in Boyle Heights, and I'm also the work for the community. And I see a lot of the people that we talk to, we make it a priority to tell them after the owners, after each day, what we did, why we did it, what we're doing. And we clean up the area, we contaminate it real, as it's supposed to be. Everyone I talk to in the community is Spanish speaking. They're my people, they're Spanish speaking. So I interpret a lot to them. And the neighbors come around and ask us, a billboard is good, but people like talking to people one-on-one. And that's what we're doing in this company. We're talking to people. The neighbors come and ask us after, what is this? Why this and that? And we explain to them. So, like I said, people that haven't been there, that don't see us working, don't see the how dedicated we are, they can't say we're not doing our job, that the company's lacking in this until you're in the field doing it. In this company here, like I said, I work with many construction companies, but this is one company where I see it's dedicated and we're all united. Majority of community workers, and they enjoy their job, and when I like finally doing something positive for the community. That's all I have to say right there.
Thank you so much for that, Jose. That was heartwarming. That was really great. We're so glad that you got a chance to listen and call in. We needed to hear that, to know that you really love your job, you really love in working in the community and working for your community. So thank you so much for that. Wanted to check in and see if anybody wanted to add anything before I go to our next caller. Okay, I am going to go to our next caller. There is a phone number here. The last 3 digits are 096. So if you called in and your last 3 digits are 096, please go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Rogelio Alvarez. I also work for ASI. I am a heavy machine operator. I just wanted to come on here and And second, what some of the guys are saying that work for the company, that we are kind of tired of hearing our names slandered in LA Times or other people that don't know the actual work that we are doing in the community. We are trying to help the community. We are cleaning it up as best as we can, so everyone can be safe and live a more comfortable life. As a heavy machine operator for the company ASI, I know the company works really hard on trying to do the best they can. There are some aspects that we can't get to everything because there are oversights, and like you guys are saying, there's some stuff that we cannot, some soil that we cannot take out, and we try to explain that to the community and the residents as best as possible. But we also need the help of DTSC and everyone else involved to help communicate that with the community as well. That's about it. Thank you for your guys' time.
Thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate you. We are going to go to, I see we have a ETAG member, another ETAG member, a co-chair, Mark Lopez. Hi there, Mark. Go ahead and unmute your line.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. Go right ahead. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, of course. I really wish tonight was going differently. I just have to say this is possibly the worst public meeting I've ever participated in. Many of us have been witnessing 9 years of cleanup failure. I'm so pissed tonight, having to hear all of the lies. The amount of misinformation being given is disgusting. And it's terrible to hear staff, DTSC staff, fall back into defensive positions after being exposed. Meredith, you know, we've developed a great relationship, I thought, over the years. And so to hear you say that you believe in the work that you are doing, despite all of the public comment for years, all of the conversations that we've had directly with your staff, many of whom are not here anymore, who worked behind the scenes to resolve issues as they were coming up. You know that this hasn't been working. And so I'm just like astonished, like, how can we move forward in good faith when you move in this way, right? We need the state, whether it's DTSC or somebody else, to commit to resampling all cleaned up homes and expanding the sampling area to 4.5 miles to get a better understanding of how far the Exide poison goes. It's really disheartening to hear staff speaking on decisions that they weren't even around for. DTSC thought no homes were polluted. And then they only wanted to clean 2 homes, even though they knew 48 homes were polluted. And then they were down with 48 homes, and then 218 homes. And then DTSC tried to not include all of the homes in the 1.7 mile radius. It took the county utilizing air modeling to push the state. The quote unquote preliminary investigation area has grown with information and community and political pressure, not because of DTSC's goodwill. It's a minimum, not a maximum. DTSC has continually tried to limit its liability. They even manipulated LAUSD until we exposed their lies and forced school cleanups. It could have happened in the summer, but it happened during the first 2 weeks of school, putting kids at greater risk. So to hear you lie about that tonight, Medi, is disgusting. You guys rely on saying things you don't even know about because somebody told you that's what it was, despite the fact that many of us have been there to witness it, to push back, to fight back. DTSC tested out to 4 miles? When? That information has never been shared with us, including in closed door meetings where DTSC wouldn't even allow county council in the building.
Mark, I'm sorry. I always appreciate you participating on these meetings, but we do have families that are listening in and community members that might have kids, and I got to speak up for our kids. I gotta speak up
Mhm.
for our kids.
Oh,
So please
yeah,
just limit the,
I
limit that
understand that.
language.
I won't even let my kids on here because their language is worse than mine when it comes to these issues.
I'm always
Yeah, for
gonna
sure,
fight
for
for our
sure.
kids.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Okay.
What was stated by Utah, I think it was Utah, it might have been Medi, I don't know. We have staff on site. That's lies. The actual oversight and compliance enforcement is severely under-resourced, and cutting corners, violating cleanup protocols, and abuses run wild. We visited sites with your staff and witnessed violations with your staff while we were there. DTSC doesn't want to know, and you specifically, Medi, have been one of the worst perpetrators of this. As if many of the issues that have been exposed to you, you hadn't heard them before. You continually deny them. It was said tonight, we remove trees. We just talked to a resident today and they didn't even remove their sugar cane. They were told they had to remove it themselves. This is
Mark,
aside from the soil tracked out into the street that we saw today, the grass that isn't going to make it into the summer. And this isn't one house. These violations are a culture the contractors operate with and DTSC accepts through an ignorance is bliss approach. And we've been getting messages tonight from workers about the workers that have been testifying tonight. And it's disgusting what they've been sharing about them, ranging from cutting corners to physical violence from these individuals. And they continue to be afraid to speak out publicly because of the toxic work environments that you've facilitated through your mismanagement and largely absent oversight. That is what has been the experience. And I know I'm over time. There's much more to be said. There's much more that has continually been said. I don't even know where to go from here. This is ridiculous tonight.
thank you, Mark. I know you're frustrated. We always try and communicate as best we can. We realized that there was some trust issues based on this LA article that came out, but we have to move forward together. We have to work for our community. So please continue to try and work with us and do it and let us do what we can to build that trust with our ETAG members, with our community members, and with our stakeholders. I'm going to see if anybody wants to.
Yeah, Mark, we have. I appreciate you calling in tonight and taking the time. And we do have a line of communication, and I do hope it stays open and deepens. I think Todd is, brings a lot of possibility of creative and just ways to increase the openness of the department and the responsiveness of the department. You laid out too many issues for me to address in total. But that said, I think it's really important that we understand things, because if you're saying, I'm hearing several things. I'm hearing that we're lying. I'm hearing that we're understanding. I'm hearing that the folks who are working on this right now, do not have the institutional memory to really understand what the arc of some of these issues and decisions has been. That's a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to have to find a way to sit down, dig into it, and make sure we understand. We really want to understand where are you finding the elevated lead levels? Is it all over the property? Is it places where we have put clean fill? It's really important to us. If we want to hold the contractor accountable, we're going to need to have the information to do so. So we will have plenty of conversation, I'm sure of it. We just count on it. So I'll just say thank you, and I'm not sure if Todd wants to add anything.
No, I'll just say I appreciate where Mark's coming from, and I'm looking forward to working with him and other members of ETAG and folks in the community to address this stuff. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you both. Appreciate you. And thank you, Mark, for calling in and for participating tonight. We always appreciate you and your input. I'm going to go to, let's see, I see a caller. These last letters is LEAD. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute and ask your question. Last few letters is LEAD. Are you there? Okay. I am going to go to Tiff Sanchez. Tiffany, yes. Hi, Tiffany. Go right ahead.
It's Tiff, thanks.
Hi, Tiff.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo all the things that Mark just said right now. I've known Mark for a very long time, and I've never heard him lose his cool. So the fact that he was actually livid right now says a lot about this meeting. I'm gonna go ahead and take it as another DTSC World Apology Tour. It's something that we're quite frankly sick and tired of, literally and figuratively. Mark has been in this fight for generations. His family's been in this fight for generations. So he has no reason to make any of that stuff up. And as far as language goes, I think it's important to recognize the anger in people and not to go on this like politeness policy, because let me tell you something, that's the way our community talks. And when they're pissed, that's how they talk. And to correct him on his language is very disrespectful, I think. That's all I'll go into about that. But also, this is nothing that we haven't been saying here at East Yard. I'm a youth organizer. I work with youth that were door knocking at Wyvern Wood. And let me tell you something, Wyvern Wood, the cleanup site was disastrous. We saw so many violations. We had youth members living there, taking pictures of leaking water. We sent those pictures to y'all and y'all didn't do anything. We said the cleanup is not going good. I was talking to a youth member that still lives there, and she said it looks worse because at least before there was grass to cover up the dirt that was contaminated with lead. So you didn't really feel like there was a lot of lead there. Now that all that stuff's ripped up, it's a dust bowl at Wyvern Wood. And it's a constant reminder, especially now that quote unquote LA Times told you all the stuff that we've been telling you. It's a constant reminder that she's not safe where she lives and she feels less safe now. So I really want you all to understand that when people use strong language, it's because we've been experiencing these things. You know, you guys can say like, we hear you, we apologize, we this and that, but that doesn't change the fact that these houses aren't being cleaned up properly. It don't change the fact that we've been telling you to expand the testing zone. It doesn't change the fact that we've been telling you that piecemealing, piece by quilt, cleaning up the properties is not the way to go. And we've been telling you that there's recontamination. So all of this stuff is not new to y'all for you guys to act like, oh man, like this is terrible. We're gonna move forward. No, a lot of us don't want to move forward with y'all, period.
Thank you, Tiff. Appreciate you. Appreciate your comments. And wanted to check in and see if anyone wanted to comment on Tiff's comments before I move forward with the next caller.
I think I would just say that I hear you. Appreciate the anger. Understand we have a long way to go.
Okay. And I have a caller whose last three digits end with 831. The caller whose last three digits end in 831. Please go ahead and unmute your line at this time and ask your question. 831. Okay. I'm going to go to, I see Stephanie has her hand up. Stephanie, please go ahead and unmute your line and ask your question. Stephanie, are you there? Stephanie, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Stephanie. Go right ahead.
Stephanie, go right ahead. Hi, yes. My name is Stephanie Dillard. I've been doing this program for over 7 years. I did everything from sampling, labor, operating, what else? Basically, I did everything in this project, okay? And yes, I'm really frustrated at how DTSC continues to neglect my emails, my calls. I've been reaching out to Meredith. I've reached out to you also, Dion, and no emails back. And I've been telling you so many times about the nepotism that's happening within the workforce. And I could tell you, there is a high levels of nepotism that's been happening that's pushing out all the workers. And this is continuing since we were sampling back in, I'm thinking in 2016, 17, I'm not too sure of the date, but this continues to happen. And as soon as the project gets to the laydown, all the workers are fired, are kicked off. And we need some more transparency when it comes to the DTSC, because it's obvious that the DTSC does not have the community in regards. That's all I have to say, because I'm really ticked off about a lot of the stuff that has been said, and a lot of the workers that have participated today are also the workers that have complaints on them. And that's all I have to say about now. And yes, we do use foul language. We use foul language when we're fed up. When we have absolutely no type of transparency, we use foul language when we're really fed up with an organization, the organization of continually genocide to our people and our community. And that's all I have to say for now. But I'm going to be here at every community meeting. As long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep attending these meetings. Because a lot of what the DTSC allowed has affected a majority of our community and the majority of our families. So no, we are not going to be complicit, and we're not going to be quiet, and we're not going to use the correct language, because a lot of us have lost family members, and it's not acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Let me read. Okay, sorry about that. I heard feedback. Thank you for that, Stephanie. I know you touched on nepotism, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Mehdi that touched on that as well. We kind of touched on that already, but I'd like to check in to see if anybody wants to respond.
I will only say, Stephanie, thank you for the call. I don't recall ever getting communication from you. I would, please reach out again to Todd, to me, to Mehdi, to Dion. If we have been unresponsive, we want to make sure that we're responsive. I know you have some communication with some of our folks, but if you have information you want to share with me, please send that along.
Thank you so much for that, Meredith. Okay, we're going to go to Paul Haswell. Paul, please go ahead and unmute your line. We'd love to hear from you. Paul, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Paul. Go right ahead. Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, I'm one of the SFNF employees. I worked with them since back in 2017, early, along with NEC, AIS. All these companies, there are workers that are professional. They do professional work. They take pride in what they do. And I understand some of these people got fired. Yeah, they did. But these are good companies, and they're professional people that take pride in what they do. And that's all I have to say about that. So you guys keep supporting our funding our program. We'll keep providing the best effort, work we can do for this community to help clean it up. These are good companies, and they've been doing this, and I don't think there's any other companies can do just a better job. That's all I have to say. So
thank you so much for calling in, Paul. We appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
We are approaching the 8 o'clock hour, and we still have several hands up. So we'll take a few more questions. I'll try and do what I can to get to you. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Let me go ahead and we'll try and do what we can to get to you, but unfortunately, we may not be able to get to everybody tonight. So again, my team is going to post our email address, our phone number, and let's keep this conversation going. We're still here. We just may not be able to get to everyone tonight, but we're going to still take a few more hands and see what we can do this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Martha Jimenez. Martha Jimenez, please go ahead and unmute your line.
Hello.
Hi, Martha. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, I am an advisory council with Exide member. I submitted 14 questions and only one has been answered. I request to be sent a written answer to every question and to post it on the official website for DTSC so that other people can see it. I am just trying to be the eyes, heart, and ears to our community as a gatekeeper. And I ask respect for our community. So please, by all means possible, we need accountability and transparency at every phase of this situation that we are enduring. And I also would like to know, why can't the Army Corps of Engineers take over the cleaning up efforts? And why does President Joe Biden not take a position on such a situation? We are tired of all the pain and suffering. Can you please answer?
Thank you so much for that, Martha. Appreciate the question. Meredith, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Martha. And we do see your questions. There are a lot of them, and we will give them attention and find a way to make sure that you get them, most certainly, and in the interest of transparency, making sure as many folks have access to our responses as we can. I can't speak on behalf of the federal administration, obviously. That could be something that comes out, more federal engagement could be a result of the process of the Superfund consideration in the National Priorities List consideration that EPA is undergoing. I really can't speak to that, but thank you for your thoughtful questions. Please stay engaged.
Thank you so much.
Despite frustration.
Right. Okay, I'm going to go to Joshua Gomez. Please go ahead and unmute your line. Joshua Gomez, there you go. Hi, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to say my name is Joshua Gomez and I'm a community worker currently employed by AIS. I'll start by saying I've lived in Maywood all my life, and I grew up in these neighborhoods, Bell, Vernon, Huntington Park, and I feel so blessed to be able to have this opportunity to be able to give back to my community and clean up the lead contamination. Excuse me. I've worked with AIS for a couple of years now, and this company is all about doing the job correctly. Not only do they care about the communities, they also care about their workers. Ensuring proper training, proper PPE, even blood lead testing to ensure that all the workers are not being contaminated themselves. So for many people to say that this company doesn't care or the workers are unhappy is very much a lie. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Joshua, for calling in and participating tonight. I'm going to go to Elijah Sanchez. Elijah, can you go ahead and unmute your line?
Hello.
Hi, Elijah, go right ahead.
Okay, yes. Yes, my name is Elijah Sanchez. I'm from the community of Boyle Heights and also a community member. I work for SF&S now, and I feel as if they are a fair company. I appreciate that I get to clean up my own community. I'm a hard worker. I work hard for my certificates. It's not like they just picked me off the streets and told me to go clean up. And it is frustrating that, people are frustrating because it's like it's just really frustrating. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate that I get to work in this field. And that's all I got to say.
Well, we appreciate you for calling in and participating and making your voice heard. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to go to Andres Gonzalez. Andres, please go ahead and unmute. There you go. Hi, Andres.
Hi, my name is Andres. I'm a resident of Maywood for 27 years. I think one of the most important questions that I have for this meeting would be where and how can members of the community access the recordings of these meetings? I believe that they should be posted and it should be easily accessible the same way that council meetings are. The other thing, I guess, would be going off of my last, I think, participation in a meeting, which was like August. I was speaking in regards to the cleanup that happened at our home in June. I was very upset with the estimation of how long the excavation would take. The whole point of staying at a hotel was to simply spend time away from the residents while excavation of well-contaminated dirt is underway. It was estimated it would take 3 days and it ended up taking 8 days. The excavation commenced on the 7th of June and stopped on the 14th of June. So in other words, the excavation was stopped halfway due to the weekend and the contaminated dirt was exposed out in the open air. I'm not entirely sure what the point of mitigating exposure was. It was all pointless. Saying that we're upset is an understatement. There was also broken pavement from one of our parkways or part of the driveway that was broken from the machinery, I want to say, that was used to excavate. We had asked you guys to come and fix it, and only a patch of it was fixed. It was almost laughable. Also, there was a lot of dirt on the side of the walls on the exterior of the home, which was supposedly have been cleaned, and it wasn't. Then the month after that, our neighbors got their yard cleaned up, and the workers whom were conducting the cleanup were highly unprofessional, to say the least. Before I continue, I'm really glad that workers are on the line and being a part of this conversation. And I don't doubt that a lot of what is being said is not happening. But also there is this, which is what happened to our home. As I was heading out to my car to head to work, I saw workers dumping contaminated dirt with shovels from my neighbor's yard onto our side of the gate where we at the time had bushes. Let me further paint the picture so you understand what I saw. They walked from my neighbor's property around the gate, dividing the properties with a shovel holding contaminated dirt, and began dumping the dirt into the bushes multiple times. Mind you, they had a large dump container that appeared to be full. When these containers holding contaminated dirt are full, our neighbor's yard's now open season for dumping yards since they're away at work and they'll never know. DTSC, is this supposed to be okay? When I stepped out the front door, I heard a loud, "Oh shit." They thought no one was home and no one was watching their reckless conduct. I wish I had recorded with my phone because
Andres, you're at 3 minutes.
Right. I'm just about done. Okay. I wish I had recorded with my phone because I don't have surveillance cameras on the property yet. How is it that these workers are being vetted? I understand that you guys went through your courses, got certified and whatnot. Maybe not all of you take your job as a joke, but I don't understand how these contractors, professionals that know how to handle contamination, I don't think in this situation, I don't see how that was professional. And then do public officials, local and state politicians know about the reckless conduct that's happening? Because if it happened to our home, it's happened to others and it will continue to happen to others. The bushes have since then.
I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you. Thank you so much. Okay. I think we did get the gist of your comments, though. We appreciate you taking the time to participate tonight. I'll see if any of our commenters want to respond at all, or Okay, so
Very quickly,
yes.
I think there is a follow-up here, at least for me, Dion. So we would appreciate if, Andres, if you could leave your information. You have Dion Fox email, or you can send us an email at exide@dtsc.ca.gov, and I will be very happy to follow up on this issue with you directly.
Thank you so much.
I
Thank
would
you,
just add,
Andres.
really appreciate the information and what you're saying is important. We will definitely look into it with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. I'm going to go to Sylvia Corona. Sylvia, please go ahead and unmute your line. Sylvia, are you there? Okay, I'm going to go to the next caller. Let me see. Hey, Zeus. Hey, Zeus. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, it's actually my husband's name.
Okay.
I just have a question, and this is it's my first time that I come into these, and it's actually I thought it was to be a little bit more about the community or like the people who have received the services, but I'm in shock. I'm just calling because my house was already serviced, and I am not happy with the results. And I did call and I talked to somebody that came and they did try to fix it, but it's still very messy. And I've also, seen the work in my neighbors' houses, which was okay. It was a good work in my neighbors, but in my house it was very, very bad. They did come last week again, but just to tell me that there's nothing that could be done at this time anymore. So I'm just very sad. I don't know if people who came to work in my house at this point, hearing of everything, everything that was said were very professional. They did, they were very kind of rude, talking about their personal issues, problems, about women. And it was very, very sad because usually, it was sometimes I was able to hear, but it was mainly my mom and my neighbors who at the end told me, oh my goodness, I hope that the people who came to your house don't come to my house, because I wouldn't like to hear the language that was used. And I say, I hope maybe instead of talking too much, taking so many breaks, if they would have worked how they're supposed to, they would have done a better job in my house. So I really, I hope that, when they come and do the walkthrough, because they haven't, they'll explain to me, what else can be done to fix my house.
Thank you so much. And I didn't get your name, ma'am.
Liliana.
Liliana, beautiful name. Feel free to reach out to me via email. And I'd love to connect with you and get more information on your cleanup and see what we can do to investigate. We want everybody to have a smooth cleanup, as smooth as possible. Feel free to reach out to me directly, Liliana. My email address is DIONNE period FAULK @DTSC.ca.gov. And if you didn't get that one, I have an easier one, Exide @DTSC.ca.gov. .gov. So please reach out to me, Liliana, at your earliest convenience. I'd like to get more information on your cleanup and see what we can do to make sure that you have a smooth cleanup going forward. I'd like to see if any of our presenters want to add anything.
I would just add, first of all, I really appreciate your comments tonight. I think what you're saying is really important. It will be very helpful for us, for you to provide information about your house so that we can follow up and make sure that the issues at your house are addressed, but also to look into these types of issues to see if we can identify something with the contractors that needs to be fixed. So this is the kind of thing that is really going to help us, and I appreciate you raising it to our attention tonight.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Todd. Thank you, Liliana, for being on this call and bringing it to our attention. This is how change is made. So we appreciate you. Please make sure you reach out to us. Okay, with that said, I'm going to go to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, please go ahead and unmute.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you now. Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, good evening. This is the first time I called into one of these meetings. You know, I was raised in Boyle Heights all my life. I live in Buena Park now, but my mom, my little nieces and nephews, my sisters, they live there. They live in the Wyvernwood area. And the fact that I'm here listening to you guys, the fact that, you know, there's possibly still lead contamination around the areas where my little nephews are playing around, it's very, very concerning to me. I do have my bachelor's in engineering. I do have my master's in engineering as well. And the reason why I say that is because I recently was made aware of these conditions around our community. I'm very aware of everything else, and this is just was brought up to my attention pretty recent, and that's really concerning. So, you know, having said all that, is there a plan to make, I guess, self-assessment test kits, not only for our properties, but for our family members and our kids? Second, is there a phase chart or a time assessment as to when and how these cleanups are going to be conducted? And maybe these questions have been answered already, but I'm, you know, just asking them again as to when they're going to be conducted and how, and are they going to be available to our community? And lastly, what kind of risk assessments are you guys taking to make sure that any cleanup, anybody that's either cleaning up or anybody that's near these properties are not going to get contaminated themselves? And of course, making that available to our community, making that available to me specifically, because I'm shocked, to be honest. I'm really shocked that I've lived in Boyle Heights all my life. The last 10 years I've lived in Boyle Heights. I live in Buena Park now, but the last 10 years I live in Boyle Heights. And I'm just recently being aware of this issue. My mom doesn't even know about what's going on. You know what I mean? My neighbors have little but no knowledge of what's going on around their properties. The kids are still playing around. You know, that's a big concern because Wyvernwood's a big place. It's a big neighborhood. Everybody plays, everybody goes outside, and the fact that it's still contaminated, there's no signs outside, there's nothing there that makes the public aware of what's going on. It's really concerning. And so if you guys could answer those questions, those 3 questions that I had, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Emmanuel. Todd?
Yeah, so just to make sure I have the questions right, Emmanuel, one was self-assessment test kits for kids. Another one was how quickly is the cleanup happening? And the third was information on risk assessments and documentation for the cleanup process. Did I get those right?
Correct. Yeah, and I think
Okay.
the phase chart and the time assessments. I mean, is there like a phase chart? I guess that's being, you know, that's available to the public as to exactly, you know, what the floor chart is as to how these things are being conducted, when and how, and of course the risk assessments for that.
Yeah. So, excuse me, with regard to self-assessment test kits, that's something I don't know that we have access to them for this. Partly that's because we rely on in laboratory measurements because they're more accurate. But I think we can, I think we can work on potentially some other ways of trying to help answer your questions on that issue. So we will need to have conversations about that when we're in the public meetings, but I'll take that as something that you want and we'll look into it. With regard to information, we have a lot of information on our website, and maybe some DTSC staff can put the location of the Exide residential cleanup website in the chat, but we have a lot of information posted there, including the schedule for the residential cleanups, and including all of the cleanup plan that was posted, which included what the cleanup goal is, which is 80 parts per million, which is designed to be health protective. So there's a lot of information out there, and we'd be happy to get you in touch with it. And we also have regular mailers to the community. But what I'm hearing overall is that you weren't aware of this issue. You're probably not alone. We are in the middle of a really significant cleanup in the heart of Los Angeles. And so, your comment about more signage and that kind of thing, I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this meeting is the need for more outreach and communication with everybody in the area to make sure everyone understands what's happening, and we will work to do that.
Thank you so much for that, Todd. We have Jorge on the line. Jorge, go ahead and unmute yourself.
So quite frankly, I can't speak for DTSC or NEC, but as far as my employer, AIS, I mean, I have nothing but good comments for them. I too have been in construction for going on 10 years now. I grew up in East LA and currently live in East LA as well. And as far as them being the subcontractor and the work that they do, I'm pretty well satisfied with it, because not only do I get to work for them, but I get to basically see the impact they're having on the community as well. So as far as my crew and every crew that I work for tend to adhere to the policies that we have to while working on any property. So that's one thing that I've noticed a lot of homeowners have concerns over, is that whether we're digging down to the depth that we're supposed to. And as it has been stated, we tend to dig down to the depth that we're supposed to, and only when we have pipes or anything like that, where you've mentioned it, where there has to be basically a change in plan. But as far as a lot of the other concerns that I've heard about nepotism and so forth, I can't really speak on that. The only thing I do know is the general amount of workers who may have been related tend to be more from the community, because as another worker stated, when you're dispatched from the union, you're dispatched. You could be brothers, you could be cousins, you don't know who you're getting. But at the beginning of this program, there was an outreach to the community for people who were interested in working there on this project. And a lot of them were family members who got the chance to work here. So that's one thing I could say. And as far as anything else, I do resonate with some of the concerns about the perimeter being extended, because I have worked on a house that's 2 blocks down, say from my grandparents' house, but their house is just right out of the zone. So that one, I don't really, I guess, understand if it hit an invisible barrier and wasn't able to travel 2 blocks up. And then as far as with the self-assessment kit, would that also be available for people who are outside of the perimeter? That's another question I have, if it will be available for everybody else. But as far as the contract that I work for, AIS, I just want to say that, we do good work, and we're all Latinos. The majority of the people who are working here are Latinos, so we're able to relate to most of the people that we meet while we're working on their houses. So a lot of the negative reviews that I'm hearing right now, honestly, I can't say much more besides a few disgruntled ex-employees with a vendetta out for the companies. Other than that, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you so much for that, Jorge. We appreciate you taking the time to participate. I'm going to go to Martinez. Martinez, you can go ahead and unmute your line. Martinez, are you there? Okay, and Sonia. Sonia, do you want to go ahead and unmute your line?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Sonia and I live in City Terrace, and an outside agency was offering lead sampling, and so I know that a lot of the conversations happen like the jurisdiction, and I know my brother's house is contaminated and he's 5 miles away from it. I have a couple curiosities. When you guys do these excavated procedures, do you guys monitor like aftermath, like record like maybe monthly or periodically, like a year, to see if this contamination was really lowered? And the other thing that it's kind of like bothering me of that I'm hearing is, where is this contaminated lead that's being excavated taken to, and are these communities or states notified of this contamination, dirt that's being placed elsewhere? Do you have that in your data or whatever website you have? And last thing, it's pretty disappointing because I would hear Exide, because I guess false information that a perimeter was a certain amount because of the testing decision. But now years later now it's being detected that there's lead all the way to City Terrace. So my question to you guys is, what data do you guys have backing it up that excavating is really working? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great question. I'd like to see, it looks like Todd want to go ahead and answer. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, I'll start. So when we excavate in a property, we're trying to remove lead contaminated soils, and we do that and we replace it with clean fill, and we test the clean fill before we put it back at the property. You asked if we do testing afterwards to make sure that the site is clean, and right now we don't do that because what we essentially have done is sampled the property ahead of time, and we've sampled the clean fill that's going in to replace the material that's been removed. And so we haven't really seen the need to do that type of confirmation testing because we know what came out and we know what went in. That being said, what we're hearing, I think tonight, and I think part of the result of the recent articles that have been published, there are concerns in the community about just the fundamental accuracy of the work that's being done. And so I think one of the things we're going to be working through in the community meetings and discussions with advocates is what to do about that, because while we are confident in the work, we are totally open to doing additional work to either identify a problem or to identify a problem or to either identify a problem or identify that there's not a problem. One of the things you asked about, which I think is pretty important, is the idea of potential recontamination. So there's a number of sources of lead in any community. So a lot of paints that were manufactured and used 30, 40 years ago had lead in them. And so lead paint is a known issue. Gasoline, actually, when it was burned 50 years ago, contained lead in it and was phased out in the 1970s and 80s. So when we established the 1.7 mile perimeter, we did so by assessing where we thought the lead came from and by doing an analysis that we thought was sufficient to be able to demonstrate that Exide was the source of the lead within that radius. And so we're focusing in that area because that is where we see the greatest risk. And as we've continued to implement the cleanup plan, we're trying to focus on the most contaminated properties within that area as quickly as we can, just to remove as much lead contaminated soils as we can. The lead contaminated soils, if they meet the definition of hazardous waste, are sent to one of several hazardous waste landfills in California. And if it's not And if it's not considered hazardous waste, it's sent to other landfills. But it is, obviously, if you take lead contaminated soil from one place, we have to put it somewhere.
Thank you so much for that, Todd. Martinez? Martinez, you can go ahead and unmute your line. Are you there? Okay, he's not there. Okay, so we are at 8:26, and it looks like we have pretty much answered most of the questions that were presented. We have gone significantly over time, but we felt that it was necessary to address the concerns of the community. And so hopefully, I hope and pray that you all believe that we did do a good job at trying to address some of those questions and concerns. Again, I'd like my team to go to the next slide. We do have some more contact information that we want to share with you. If we were not able to get to your question this evening, there is still an opportunity to get your question to us. Can we please go to the contact slide, the informational slide? There we go. Thank you so much. So we have our informational slide here. At the very top listed is DTSC, Exide Cleanup Project Information Hotline. Feel free to call that number. That number is 844-225-3887. Or you can email us anytime, exide@dtsc.ca.gov. We have other sources listed here for your convenience. We have LA County Blood Lead Screening Hotline. There's a lot of community members that have asked for that information. So here is the information for you. We hope that you note the number and contact LA County if you want to pursue that. We also have Cal OSHA for questions. That's Cal OSHA Workplace Complaint Hotline, 626-239-0369. We also have California Department of Industrial Relations, Labor Commissioner's LA office. That number is 213-620-6330. Again, that number is 213-620-6330. There were some concerns, questions raised about work and worker concerns. So there's one of the resources that we wanted to provide for you. We also have the California Attorney General Investigator. That number is 619-738-9694. And you can access an investigator in English and in Spanish. So those are some of the numbers that we wanted to provide to you as resources as well. So with that said, I'd like to go to our closing remarks. And I would love to invite our director back, Meredith Williams, for her closing remarks. Meredith.
Thank you, Dion, and thank you everyone for all the time you took today. I said we wanted to listen, and we did listen. We captured, I know that we were capturing things in real time. We have a lot of follow-up to do. I want to return back to some of the comments that Todd and I made early on this evening, which is that we do expect to change the way we interact with you, a lot more in person, a lot less of this format. It's not satisfying. It's not a good way to, it's not as conducive to conversation. We expect to begin that process the week of March 6th by being out in the community and have, provide you with the opportunity to ask in-depth questions on specific topics and really stay engaged with us, whether that's the contracting process, whether that's the sampling process, or how we document the cleanups. We will be there and available to continue this conversation, stay engaged. I know there's so much frustration We've been through so much. It is I'm going to be frank and say that it is hard for me to understand what it's like to have had this specter of Exide for 40 years, for decades, however long it's been, and still feel as though you're not being protected. We are committed to protecting you and to bringing resources to bear to make that happen. So again, I want to thank you. That's the biggest thing that I want to do. And I beg you to stay engaged with us as we keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meredith. We want to thank all of our community members for participating, for your questions, your comments, your engagement. We get better by working with our community. And so just continue, like Meredith said, please continue to stay engaged with us. We want to build our trust with the community. Again, thank you all for staying on till 8:30. We were supposed to end at 8, but we felt that it was very important to answer your questions and your comments. So thank you so much for staying with us till the end. We appreciate you. Please use our contact information. If you did not get a chance to ask your question or make your comment today, please continue to stay engaged with DTSC. Have a wonderful night, and we look forward to connecting with you the week of March 6th for our in-person community meetings. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. And one more thing, we will leave this public meeting open for 2 minutes because we want to allow all of you an opportunity to go to our chat feature and make note of the information that was posted in the chat. So we will leave this Zoom on for 2 minutes to allow you that opportunity to collect that information. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful night.